Today, I want to talk about a common pushback that we get from not only necessarily clients, but also investors, team members, people in the industry really, who ask the obvious question, which is, you guys are working on all this stuff. Obviously, more things are coming out consistently by the big frontier players, the large enterprises. They're consistently releasing features and tools that we have built internally for clients, maybe using N8N in the early days, maybe using Cloud Code or some other third party, quote unquote, third party system. And then what we've seen, obviously, over the course of the last couple of years is Google in particular and Microsoft have embedded AI into their core platforms. So Google Workspace has Gemini pretty deeply embedded, not as deeply as you'd like, but pretty deeply embedded in their suite of services. So it is Microsoft, obviously, with Copilot. Now, a lot of people talk crap about Copilot, a lot of people talk crap about Gemini, and so they still prefer to use OpenAI or Anthropic to do a lot of their document creation or search across all of their data within the system. But it is true that these tools are getting better and better. They obviously are incentivized to get more people using these features within their systems rather than hooking them up as connectors to some of these other providers. And so we consistently get the question is like, hey, okay, well, Google, I'm watching Google month by month, quarter by quarter, roll out new features or add Gemini or add capabilities to Gemini within the embedded ecosystem that they already have. And a lot of people, a lot of companies already store all of their data on Google Drive. They have their emails with Google. They do, all of their documents are made with Google Docs. Same thing with Microsoft. And so naturally the question becomes like, well, why don't I just sit and wait until Copilot gets better or until Gemini gets better and just use the tools that are going to be embedded within the ecosystem where all of my data lives currently, which I think is a valid question. And it's a question that we get, right? It's a pushback that we get because a lot of the work that we do initially when we're laying the foundation has to do with data capture, ingestion, contextualization against a source of truth platform like a CRM, right, doing classification and then provisioning to where it needs to go. And then, Google obviously has a feature now where it does classify your emails, not very well, but it classifies the emails. And then you can play it forward and say, okay, well, if Google and Microsoft are doing this data classification, they own the email ecosystem at least, and the documents ecosystem, then where do we come in? How do we add value, right? As a third party team that comes in and builds these systems. Well, our response typically is like, that would just make our job way easier. We're not even at the agent building part yet. We're not at the workflow building part yet when we're laying this foundation. The foundation is a prerequisite to get to the real stuff that actually matters, which is how are we going to actually scale the business with much fewer people on staff, right? How do we increase efficiency per outcome? Or to produce each outcome. So for us, it's like, hey, let them continue to make these updates. It's just going to make our job easier. It's going to be easier to build agents. It's going to be faster to build agents. The data's already going to be there. Ideally contextualized, but who knows? That's kind of a big problem because it requires a lot of customization based on the use case in the business. But it's still true that this kind of like just wait until the big players, come out with something useful is pervasive. It's funny because obviously it's in their best interest to become the one-stop shop ecosystem and eat the entire market. But then you have Satya Nadella out here in a Wall Street Journal interview talking about, hey, the economy shouldn't be dependent on a few, AI giants that have all of the data.
The Microsoft CEO is advocating for cheaper and user-controlled AI, also to steer away from a future dictated by frontier models. Jessica, the irony is not lost on me that he is one of the giants in technology that is paving the way to a certain degree.
And he's like arguing against this like idea of ecosystem login, which, it's obviously just he's talking his book and he's got a really good PR team. And it's not true. Like the entire point of Microsoft's business is to build an ecosystem where you capture value all the way up and down the chain. So him saying this is just to assuage the fear, basically. It's like, hey, like nothing to worry about, right? We're not trying to eat the entire economy. But yes, you are. He's obviously trying to eat the economy. That's the whole point. But I think what he's trying to do is position himself as, a model-agnostic provider. So obviously Microsoft isn't necessarily famous for having their own model. They have Copilot, which has been powered by OpenAI, powered by Claude. It seems like it's powered by Gemini now. I can't even tell which model Copilot is running on at the moment. Partly what he's doing, I think, is negotiating and playing the frontier model providers against each other by saying, hey, this ecosystem lock-in thing, we don't like it. We Microsoft want to be able to switch the models based on whichever is performing best and have that be the model that's powered by, that's powering Copilot. Like Microsoft right now is seriously considering using DeepSeek instead of OpenAI because of the price difference. And so they obviously don't want to be locked into one model per se. And I think this idea of lock-in is starting to, everyone was kind of aware of it early on where it's like, hey, I'm on OpenAI, now Claude is getting really good. Let me switch over to Claude. Oh, it's such a hassle. Now Codex is really great. Should I switch back to Codex? So this idea of lock-in has been around for a while, but now because of the holistic nature of the systems that are being built, the orchestration of workflows and agents and data across multiple different systems, now that all of this stuff is being put together, it's become abundantly clear that where you store the data, where humans and agents have access to that data, the same data, is extremely important. And how you essentially give agents or LLMs or agentic workflows access to that data so it can manipulate it or do whatever it needs to do with it is the core of the question. It's like, hey, do we use a connector and connect it to Claude? Do we want a local setup where we're hosting the models and we could be model agnostic maybe? Do we just want to use the built-in bolt-on tooling that Google or Microsoft provides in out of the box? And obviously the easier thing to do when you're essentially thinking about build versus buy, which a little bit of it is build versus buy, is you're balancing, hey, Google's coming out with stuff every month. Should I just wait for Google? Should we just become really good at Google's features or using Google's features? Should we be like front of the pack there? And that's like our AI strategy, right? Because our data's already there, it might make it easier. And really, Google and Microsoft, they own the work surface, the place where people, like the digital office, basically, they own that. They have procurement trusts. So if you're trying to go through procurement teams, which we've done, which can be a freaking hassle, Google and Microsoft are, they check all the boxes, right? They're a safe bet. They're able to subsidize and bundle their stuff together. They're able to offer things at ridiculously low prices because they can afford it. And they know that they can afford to essentially pay for your usage to some extent, right? Subsidize some extent of your usage over the course of years, knowing that you'll get locked in, ripping your data out, moving your systems, moving your workflows is going to be a pain in the ass. And then they can raise prices over time, right? If they even need to, right? Because they could just lock you in at a certain price and then work on the cost optimization side of things. So, they have a lot of pricing control, pricing power. People are very used to using these tools. So we used to build a lot of just like chatbots as part of chat interfaces as part of the things that we're building. And almost never are those better than ChatGPT or better than Claude as a chat experience. And so people would still end up going to Claude or ChatGPT. So it's like, hey, they'd rather do that. Let's just like expose the system as an MCP or a connector and like give them access to it via ChatGPT or Claude. And that just works better. It's a better experience. But obviously Google and Microsoft kind of like own the where the work actually lives. Like all the documents actually live there. The emails live there. Your calendar lives there. That's the main stuff, right? The fact that they're so like Google's meeting recorder is like fine, but it sucks compared to like all the third-party ones. The fact that they're not actively, aggressively trying to capture that entire thing is crazy to me. Even Microsoft, it's crazy. Like there's no reason why we should have third-party tools for virtual meets. Just build it into the meeting interface that we're already in. It's not that hard, right? So like that they're not building their own models necessarily, and they're just going to be the ecosystem or the platform where you can attach whatever model you want from whatever provider you want, right? So Google might be a little bit different, obviously, because they have Gemini, but I still think both of them eventually Google is going to go this way, mainly because they're going to want to capture more market. And if they make people use Gemini, then they're obviously cutting off a vast swath of the market that could be using Google products. And so they're going to open it up. And they're essentially going to be model routers for workflows, which is fine because they have the data. It's pretty obvious to see like, okay, these guys could just conquer the world. But like I said, with the meeting recorders, it's a subpar product. Every person I talked to about Copilot doesn't like Copilot. Some people have said like, oh, Copilot's getting better. It's like decent now. Nobody likes Copilot. Nobody really uses Gemini. Like anti-gravity came out, but when's the last time you've really heard anything about anti-gravity, which is like Google's like IDE thing? That like they're not pushing on it in the same way. When you look under the hood a little bit deeper, you start to realize, well, it's not really about the ecosystem, because what we're trying to do is build AI native businesses. And these are essentially businesses that are run as much as possible via AI systems, agentic workflows. And those workflows are essentially a translation of what is currently supposed to happen within the business. What are the inputs? What gets done to produce the outputs? And can you collapse that workflow in any way possible using LLMs and automation or agents? And the business logic, the operational logic needed for that to happen, and that to happen at a quality that matters in real production, real world environments, it's not going to be some bolt-on generic system that gets you there. That's why Copilot is subpar and disappointing for most people. Same with Gemini. And so regardless of if you're using these platforms or not, this operational knowledge, this operational intelligence has to be built into these systems anyway. Obviously, most workflows don't even live inside of one ecosystem. Now, part of that is because humans are human, and we like to use different things for different tasks. We have like a natural instinct to categorize things. So if I go to Google Drive, I'm doing that for one thing. If I'm going to Google Calendar, I'm doing it for one thing. If I'm going to, I mean, it's two Google products. If I'm going to Slack, I use Slack for a different thing. We don't use Google Chat, even though we could, but we don't. We use Circleback to record our calls, but we could use like Google's recording thing. That's in-house. We use Google Calendar, we use Google Drive, but we were using Dropbox for a lot of things. So why are we using Dropbox if we have Google Drive? Well, we like Dropbox better for certain reasons. It's got different features. And so there are two sides of this coin where it's like, hey, there are all these SaaS products that have gone really deep at these like singular use cases, and we all like to use different ones because they're the best at whatever use case we need in different scenarios. But that has led to like an explosion of SaaS products. And I think everybody who runs a business is constantly thinking, how can we just trim the tech stack spend across the organization? Can we just like centralize this? Can we optimize in some way while maintaining like a de-risked position without getting, uberly locked in and end up spending even more money on the back end or being like in a vulnerable position? And obviously AI like gives us, we can see a path to that actually being real. And so like there's a natural inclination to think, okay, well, like everything is going to start to centralize because it really is just like data being passed through system to system. And the differentiator is mostly around the user experience at this point. And if we take the user out of the equation, then what's the point of having a variety of different products, especially if there are like special features that are part of these products that are different than others? Can the system just like build those features out, right, if needed? And it's honestly hard to predict. I think what it looks like in 20 years is different than what it's going to look like in 5, significantly. But it's easy to sit here and say, okay, like let me just wait till Google and Microsoft figure it out. But we've been waiting for a couple of years now, and they just haven't quite figured it out from an AI perspective, right? They have the data there, but from an AI perspective, they haven't really figured it out. People are using Claude and ChatGPT. They're not really using Gemini outside of like Google search. They're not really using Copilot unless the company is making them use Copilot, which some of them are. When I sit and I look at this and I'm like, hey, what is the actual like benefit of building a custom system when a lot of this stuff is baked in, or maybe perhaps one day going to be baked into the Google suite, the Microsoft suite, maybe even built into the Anthropic Claude suite of tools or OpenAI's ChatGPT suite of tools. Like, these guys are trying to capture the market. The freaking OpenAI record and replay thing. These guys are trying to capture every aspect of the market. If you're a business owner who's like not a developer, which developers have a certain personality where they would never do this, but like if you're a business owner who's just like trying to make a quick decision and be as efficient as possible with that, it's very easy to be like, okay, I'm just going to wait and use the tools here and just have like one system that runs everything. The issue is that all the tools and all the features that are built, one, are going to be generic, and not up to speed on exactly the logic that you want. So they're always going to be like maybe 80% there, maybe even 90% there, but not quite get you where you need to go. And so you're going to end up filling the gaps anyway with people or external automations or systems or tools, which is what we do today. And it just doesn't know, because it's generic, it just doesn't know the detailed logic of the workflow. So one of the issues with this whole idea of like screen record and turn into a skill or turn into an agent is it's essentially one-to-one mapping what a human is doing on the computer to what we're asking an agent to do. But what a human does on a computer, let's say it's somebody who's downloading a bunch of bank statements, putting them in Claude to do a bunch of analysis and then spit out an Excel sheet, and they're over here recording the screen, clicking download on every single bank statement, dropping it into a folder, and then loading it into Claude or telling Claude, hey, go to this folder and like do whatever you need to do. Do we really want to build an automation that is like literally a browser agent downloading all of these things one by one? That might not be the most efficient way to do it. Maybe there's a way to get these bank statements more efficiently with a better script or like a better access point into the system. Bank statements is hard because there's not really APIs there typically, but by showing exactly, the issue is by showing exactly what a human is doing, clicking around on a computer and trying to just translate that into like a one-to-one map of what an agent is doing, you lose the opportunity to find massive efficiency and look at it from a first principles perspective of, hey, this business function, what is the point, right? What is the ultimate output that they're responsible for producing? And then you look at, okay, like what is like the minimal amount of information or context that's needed to produce that output? It doesn't mean clicking around, asking so-and-so, doing multiple different things that takes like hours or days necessarily. But if we have all the data there available and an agent can use the tools that it needs to get the same output done in a few seconds or minutes without doing the same step-by-step approach that a human would do, that efficiency jump is not just, oh, we automated this process and now this human has like more capacity to do other stuff. It's really like we've fundamentally changed the operational overhead that is required to execute this workflow and produce this outcome. So the ROI of said outcome is like much higher because the cost to produce it is much lower. And that in and of itself, rippled throughout all functions throughout the entire business, is really the key, And that's where we're going. That's what the AI native transformation is. It's not just bolt-on AI assistants like Copilot or Gemini. And it's not just bolt-on AI features in, a software product where it's like, okay, like all of these vertical SaaS products are coming out, vertical AI SaaS, and it's like, okay, I thought AI was supposed to like simplify things and like handle all this for me, but we're actually going to invest in like double the amount of products that we're already currently invested in because it has like some bolt-on AI assistant that does like one vertical thing like really, really well. Like, okay, it sounds cool right now in this phase of the evolution, but it's obviously not where the future is going. The future is going towards something like the world model that Jack Dorsey's talking about in his blog, which is like the hierarchy of intelligence. We're going towards something more like that than we are this whole like, expansive market of agentic SaaS. Like it just doesn't make sense. I think obviously there's a money grab happening. People are throwing a shit ton of money at it. Feels like the right thing to do because of that, but it's not. And I think we all know that deep down, but we kind of get caught up in the hype, and that's okay. Maybe people will make a lot of money during the hype cycle, but I think it's a little bit more interesting to play the real game, which is the long one. So anyway, that's all for today.